Hey everybody, I'm Eric, your learning futurist, and in this video I talk about an update on one of my passions that you guys know about, net neutrality, and more specifically, big telecommunications companies, big tech companies, and why are they in conflict with the idea of net neutrality, and what things are they doing, what activities are they doing that go against the idea of net neutrality. There's a couple of lawsuits that came out, a couple of findings that came out that I'm going to show you in this video and talk about net neutrality and the big telecom companies and what they're doing against it. Coming right up. So it's no secret that I'm a big advocate for net neutrality. The idea that data cannot be throttled or put a paywall into place so that we can have an open discussion, an open internet, an open means of communication, which is so direly important in our way of life using the internet these days. So net neutrality was famously kind of ripped apart in 2017. This was a huge kind of effort on both sides between the big tech companies and the general internet community. And the FCC opened up for comments from the general public. And I was a part of this kind of group of people that went online to tell the Federal Trade Commission and then the chairman, Ajit Pai, that we supported net neutrality and that please stop considering the idea of flipping back the rules or the regulations that would force the FCC to more strictly regulate companies that were going against the idea of putting paywalls on information or restricting or throttling data for specific types of services or customers or companies. And going through this process in 2017, there was a lot of funny business going on. So I went through the process. It wasn't an easy process to get registered with the FCC. I filed basically a comment to tell the FCC that I was in support of net neutrality and please do not take any restrictions or stop enforcing the idea of net neutrality. But when I went back in to log in to kind of recheck and confirm that my comment was on the system, it wasn't very user friendly. And I saw millions and millions of weird posts in there. And I found my name, which is not the most common name in America. There's maybe like a dozen or so that I know of people that share my name. And I found two others with my exact same name in the system, and they were surprisingly in contradiction to my opinion. They were for lifting the ban on net neutrality, for basically getting rid of net neutrality. And so a lot of people found these kind of strange things happening. So there was an investigation, and it took all the way up until now to actually find out what happened with that. And this whole thing that happened between the general internet community that was wanted to keep their internet kind of free from restrictions and throttling and paywalls for certain kinds of information, and the telecom companies that really wanted to have more control over the services and innovate on collecting more profit and gain more influence in. They see all the money that Facebook and Google are making in advertising around this space too, so having a little bit more control over the data running through their pipes will allow them more access to that type of revenue. So of course, this kind of this this process in which the FCC asked the general public for comments, and what happened afterwards is really exemplary of how the interests of the general public and the telecom companies really collide. So I just said that there was a lot of funny business going on, and in fact, we now know this is pretty much true. It took a long time in the courts in New York State, and they filed a very long report showing they followed money that was given to companies and organizations to file fake opinions. New York says has ruled, and this court case is finally finished, that the many tech companies basically committed fraud in this kind of open process that the FCC tried to hold to gather and get the general consensus of opinion of Americans around net neutrality. And famously, after seeing millions of opinions in both sides of the issue, we don't know really if the FCC, they didn't have to listen to those opinions, but it goes to show some of the funny business and the lengths that these telecom companies will go to kind of make sure that they have more control over and more freedom from the idea of net neutrality. So all those comments were faked. What did New York in their filing, in their report state? Just to take a look at some of the things that they said. They found that broadband companies spent $8.2 million to oppose net neutrality, including generating 9 million comments and letters in opposition. So basically a bunch of fake letters. And that still didn't outnumber the number of real people that were active people on the internet going on and trying to voice their opinion for us to have a more net neutrality valued internet. More than 9.3 million additional fake comments using fictitious identities were submitted to the FCC automated software. So those names that I just said earlier, with including my own name, that I found in the system when I went back and tried to look at my own to make sure that my own comments were filed properly, were probably fake. And so what is going to happen? So we found out that this sort of nice democratic process of asking the public what is important to them as far as net neutrality and making the FCC regulate infringements on these ideas more on the internet, it basically got muddied. And since then, net neutrality has basically started to lift. FCC and AGPI at the time basically saying that they're going to try to allow these tech companies, these telecommunications companies, to regulate themselves. Light touch policy, I think, is what the terminology they use. So why is this important? Well, the major contributors to this fraud in these tech companies and these telecommunications companies are getting in the business of media. And so, for example, Comcast has NBC and Hulu, the partners in Hulu. AT&T is famously bought HBO. And so streaming services, for example, are a big part of these services now. And what they're calling this now, what is become even more prevalent since the FCC has started backing away from regulating net neutrality even more since 2017 in this kind of fraudulent process that happened, is the idea of zero rating. Now, if you ever hear the term zero rating, it's put to customers as though this is a good thing. You don't have to use your data cap for using this service or this app or this streaming video or whatever. So basically, zero rating means it's throttled. It's basically anti-net neutrality, zero rating is. Sometimes customers like it, right? Famously, AT&T is trying to zero rate HBO on their devices because they own that content, so they want to offer it for free against their data cap. So if you have a mobile device and you have a monthly data cap, you watch HBO, it doesn't go against that data cap. But Netflix and maybe some other streaming services, it goes against it. So that basically is favoring and throttling their own services so they can gather more content, profit from their content, more advertising revenue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're starting to see more bubbles of information from this news gathered, and our echo chambers are being more exemplified through this type of system of zero rating. So since 2017, we found out this process was muddied, it was fraudulent, but net neutrality was still lowered, and these companies have tried to push further on the idea that they can throttle and put paywalls on the system. So in this system in the future, what if you're an innovator and you really come up with a new service, a new type of, I don't know, like a new type of YouTube or a new social media services that has a lot of great video on it? You're going to have to negotiate with these companies to compete with the zero rating that they put on their partners or their preferred customers or their preferred services that they work with or they own. We've already found that this is bad for customers. Zero rating actually costs customers more because, just like the lack of competition in ISPs in the United States is bringing prices up to some of the most expensive internet prices in the world, slowly gathering. It's because they choose not to compete together. They make arrangements with customers. They bundle things together to make things more expensive. And therefore, the same thing is happening with this process of the anti-net neutrality and the zero rating moving forward. So one study found that analyzing the cost, yes, it's going to cost customers more in this fashion. So whenever I would ask you to think twice, to think about if AT&T or some company says, oh, we're going to give you free streaming services. Yes, you can watch that one service for free, but they're going to be making stuff on the back end. They're going to control some of the content coming to you. You're going to be locked into an ecosystem, and it's going to be harder to switch to maybe another one if you're used to seeing that content. And in the end, is it really going to save you money and time and effort and all that stuff? Maybe, maybe not. That's a good one to think about, I think. But one last thing on top of that is that we noticed back here, where is it? This one. Verizon had Yahoo, and they were also trying to get into this idea of getting more money, more kind of Facebook and Google advertising money with the traffic going through their telecommunications networks. But this pushback recently on this, thanks again to California, they have their net privacy laws, and they're trying their best to be the beacon of hope in the United States for net neutrality. They have their own net neutrality bill that's passed. They basically told AT&T that you cannot zero rate HBO Max because that's just unfair to all other streaming services. They're saying zero rating is basically cheating the idea of net neutrality. So if you're going to own the pipes of communications, you cannot prioritize your own streaming services. It's just not fair. So a similar thing happened here in Japan. For example, there's convenience stores. There's one called 7-Eleven. There's another one called Family Mart. 7-Eleven offered free Wi-Fi to everyone that wanted to come and hang out in the parking lot, but that free Wi-Fi blocked the websites of their competitors, and that was found to be illegal. That's kind of a it's a more in-your-face violation of net neutrality, but it's basically, close to being the same thing. You can own, if you're going to give access to the internet, if you're going to be the point from which the general public is going to be accessing the open internet, you cannot prioritize, throttle, or put paywalls on things. And that is the essence of net neutrality. Right. So what do you guys think? We have a ruling now that shows that net neutrality decision in 2017 was very much fraudulent. There's a lot of, backhanded deals going on. There's a lot of fake comments that millions of dollars paid, but yet So far, nobody's being fined or gone to jail. No consideration of actually taking back this idea of lifting net neutrality ideas and values within the FCC. So largely, we found out that this was there's a lot of underhanded things going on from the tech and communication telecom industry in this process, but we largely have no kind of pullback or recourse to this. We just know that we have to keep fighting and moving forward to make sure that we have an open and fair and decent internet. It's not an easy thing. There's a lot of nuance also to the idea of net neutrality, but at its heart, I think is going to be good for our global internet society. All right. I think I talked a little bit too much on this net neutrality update. Again, my name's Eric, your learning futurist. I'll try my best to keep you up to date on what's happening with privacy and net neutrality moving forward. Come back and see us again. See you guys.